I will say that school needs to do better background checks.
Yeah, my God.
Nobody said anything. They're like, that's gym class. I guess that's gym class. I've never been to gym class.
Hello, and welcome to Saving People, Queering Things, the supernatural podcast where four homeschoolers try to make it sound like they've been to a high school before.
Today, we are pulling up to season 4 with episode 13, After School Special. I'm Abigail, and my pronouns are they, them.
I'm Sam. My pronouns are she, her.
I'm Noah. My pronouns are he, him. And today we have a lovely returning guest. Welcome back, Theo. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm Theo. I use any pronouns. Go ham.
Woohoo.
Thank you for being here again. And for those who maybe don't know or remember, what is your connection to this particular group of people on the podcast?
So I have known Noah, I want to say most of my life. Noah's my brother. Yeah. And Abigail is my sibling, once extended through my older sibling. So
yeah,
through a blood pact.
Yeah, it's true.
And Sam
That's
by
true.
extension.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Funnily enough, it is the first time that Theo and Sam have actually interacted outside of this connections with all of the other siblings.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It's
now
so
we're going to
cool.
have to get one of your other siblings and then Phoebe on the podcast next. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, we'll just extend it across.
Yeah.
An 8-person
Content for days.
episode sounds like a nightmare to edit.
Yeah. Get all of our
Oh
siblings
my
on. No, that
God.
sounds like a really bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you back. It's always a great time.
Always good to be here.
This is a hell of an episode for it to happen on. So
Yeah, we chose this episode for specifically do sibling pairs because this episode is flashback and we thought it would be fun.
Very sibling reliant.
Yes.
hell yeah. It's a very sibling heavy episode.
Okay, now that you've met everyone, it's time to catch you up. If you haven't watched Supernatural recently, here's what you've missed on the road so far. First up, Abigail is going to recap the season so far. Are you ready?
I think that I am ready.
All right, go for it.
Oh, whoa, don't get a countdown? I don't get a countdown?
No.
Sorry, I'm not
No
prepared.
countdown for you.
3, 2, go for it.
Okay, so Dean is rescued from hell from an angel, Castiel, despite the fact that Dean doesn't believe in angels. And they have a couple of monsters of the week. They meet another angel named Anna who ripped out her grace. The angels and demons seem to be fighting over Lucifer and seals that are being broken to free Lucifer from hell. Dean reveals that in hell he was tortured / did torture, and there is a lot of trauma from that.
Wow.
Bravo.
There were probably other important things, but
Nah.
Got it.
You got Castiel in there. It's fine.
it's really all that was essential at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Ruby's also around.
Oh yeah.
Probably should have mentioned that. Ruby's
Oh
also
gosh,
around.
people aren't going to know that. It was after 30 seconds.
That part's cut.
Yeah.
Damn it.
So now Theo is going to recap this week's episode. How are you feeling? Are you ready?
I'm ready. I wrote it down this time.
I'm counting you in. 3, 2, 1, go.
There's a supernatural murder in a high school, a place that Dean and Sam once went to shortly. Sam was bullied there. Dean kissed around. The monster, a ghost, is a boy who Sam knew then, who bullied Sam, and Sam bullied back. Dean back then was called out, didn't like it. They beat the ghost, and Sam talked to an old teacher that inspired him. The episode ended with the teacher saying, "Are you happy, Sam?" And Sam looking really confused at how to answer that. I think that's the most important part.
Damn. With time to spare, like it was nothing.
It's like one breath.
Very thorough. Very, very thorough. You hit all of the beats.
Hit it all.
Yeah, you got
I
all of it.
think. Kind of.
It was very focused.
Yeah.
Nothing about neglect, but whatever. It's fine.
Hey, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to
Yeah.
that.
We're
That's
gonna
our job
get
later.
there.
Okay.
You did great. But now it's time to pick some music to accompany us on our journey. We are collecting songs to create a season 4 mixtape. Here's what we've got this week. Abigail.
I have had this song saved for at least 3 or 4 months. for this episode, so I'm very excited about it. The song I've chosen is Freeze Your Brain. It's from the Heathers soundtrack. I'm going to read a couple of the lyrics from it because
it's so spot on.
it's very, very spot on. Like the first couple of lines are, I've been through 10 high schools. They start to get blurry. No point planting roots because you're gone in a hurry. My dad keeps 2 suitcases packed in the den, so it's only a matter of when. It's got the energy of Dean, particularly in this episode, of just like, what's the point of making any actual connections? We're going to be gone in 2 weeks. And also about the contrast of like interacting with people who don't have any context for what your experience is. Yeah, it's a great song. I highly recommend it. And that is my selection for this week.
Damn.
Yeah.
Very well done. The song I went with was 17 by Judah and the Lion. Kind of just an angsty song about how his high school experience was and how it's just rough and it's crappy and there's not always the best way to explain how you feel in that moment. Yeah, fits this episode pretty well.
Yep. Same energy.
Yeah.
Theo?
So I chose Alien Boy by Oliver Tree. And mainly because the chorus is like, I fell down to earth from 100 miles away and somehow I still make it work, but it's overrated and somehow played out. And I think that's very like young Winchesters, just like in the quote unquote normal world, not being the apex predator that they're being raised to be.
Yeah, is a good descriptor.
Damn.
But yeah.
Well done. Good
Nice
choice.
choice.
Right. Mine is School Days by the Runaways. It talks about being like 18 and it reminded me of Dean. Yeah. Some of the lyrics are like, I used to be a troublemaker, hated homework, was a sweet heartbreaker.
Yeah.
Checks
Like,
out. Yeah.
Very Dean this episode.
Yeah.
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 Dean vibes.
Nice. This is the really cohesive soundtrack. I really appreciate when we all go for the same energy.
Now that we have our mixtape playing, let's get this show on the road with today's episode, After School Special, through the theme of neglect.
Yeah, where do we want to start? Does anyone have a place they want to start? Because I have a lot of notes today.
Honestly, we can't get a better intro to neglect as a theme better than John Winchester
Amen.
right at the start.
God,
Right out the
That
gate.
first shot.
this theme is very, very fitting for this episode.
It's fitting for like every single character in this episode. It's not just Sam and Dean. Like it's the kids, the modern day kids. It's the kids back when they were in school. Like it's everyone.
The school system in general and John Winchester alone have so much blood on their hands.
Yep.
Rough.
Yeah.
Rough.
Yeah. Like my very first note was that this episode is really just all about the impacts of neglect on children specifically.
Yeah. It's a heavy episode too.
Yeah, I forgot how sad and heavy this episode
Yeah.
was.
The way that it explores multiple different angles of the trauma of high school is fascinating. It goes so hard.
Yeah, and that's maybe a good little segue there that we're going to be talking about. I mean, we're going to talk about neglect. Obviously, we're going to be talking about parental neglect and educational neglect and also, trauma and illness. Like there's going to be a lot of heavy content in this episode. If that's going to be something that might bother you, listen at your own caution, take care of yourself.
We won't be hurt if you skip this episode
Yes.
for the next one.
Yes. And I will have a list of the specific content warnings of everything that we do end up talking about
Yeah.
in show notes. So if you want to take a look at that list before you continue listening, that will be there.
That being said, it is a really well done exploration of these effects, and the way it deals with both teen suicides that happen is fascinating. It doesn't glorify them in the slightest. It just draws you back to how they got messed up from that and are just continuing to hurt, and everybody around them is too.
Mm-hmm. And how the circumstances around them set them up to fail and set them up to be alone and to not have a lot of good options. And the impact of neglect for these teenagers, for Dirk with his family and his like not having support systems in place when his mother was sick, and then for Barry, his the neglect of the school system and of people to stand up for him. Like both of those things have huge impact on their adult lives, and neither of them make it very far into adulthood, which is
Tragic.
Yeah. And it makes a really big point, especially like the first scene being like this girl's getting bullied and she goes to sit with somebody else and they try to comfort her and she lashes out to feel more secure about herself and more like powerful because she was just getting bullied, which in turn like creates havoc and like tension. And it's just like
It's a cascade. It gets worse as it goes down and keeps spreading.
Yeah.
And that little mirror that we're getting at the very beginning is the same mirror we're getting with Sam and Barry and Dirk later on, like fleshed out in the episode, where Sam is sticking up to a bully and accidentally ends up restarting that cycle with a new victim.
Yep.
I think they do a really good job of showing that the bullies, they have stuff going on. Like it's not just like this bad kid who's a bully.
Right.
They go back to the fact that he was neglected and had a lot of trauma, and that's where it comes out of.
It doesn't give him a pass, doesn't give him an excuse in the episode, but it explains a lot of his backstory and where they're coming from, each different side.
And it does a really cool job of like pointing you towards Barry, because Barry's obviously like having a lot of troubles. He always has. And so, you know, Sam and Dean are on the same mind track of like, oh, of course it's Barry. Like, you know, he was a nerd, he was bullied. It's got to be him. And then like flipping that around and being actually this guy who did bully you, like also really was hurt from that. And like that ended up ruining his life. Just the way that things can turn when you're just assuming the stereotype of like, this guy's small and nerdy, of course he's gonna have a hard time. Yeah, he is gonna have a hard time, but so is this other guy.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think this episode does do a good job of saying what you see initially isn't always what is true. And particularly when it comes to kids, that like your perspective as a kid or as a teenager is going to have like these massive barriers to seeing other people accurately. Like neither Sam nor Dean, as the teenagers that we see them as, have an ability to have perspective on the other people around them and what they're really going through. And I even think of like the what's her name, the girl that Dean is with, Amanda. Yeah, even her, she also doesn't have the ability to fully grasp what Dean's going through. And like they, you know, none of these teenagers are actually really, despite the bullying that's happening, none of them are trying to like ruin the others' lives. They're just all so caught up in their own pain and the neglect that they've experienced that they're all just like scrambling to kind of try and survive. And they're doing that at the expense of each other.
Yeah. Because it's the only thing they can't do it, you know, to parents. They can't, teachers, but
and most of them in this story like explicitly don't have parents involved or have like shitty parents.
Yeah.
You know, there's that piece of like neglect of, even for like Dirk's dad, who seems like a really loving parent, because of the circumstances was unable to properly care for Dirk. And there's like the neglect piece there that's not really, doesn't seem to be intentional on Dirk's parent, like Dirk's dad's case. It's just, that one's just circumstance, as opposed to John, who I think we can argue that like
choices were made.
Yeah, John had other options. Dirk's dad, it doesn't necessarily seem like he maybe did. Sounds like he was working because that was necessary.
Yeah, he said he was working 3 jobs, so he was busting his ass, it sounds like.
I think we should talk about how Dean feels more comfortable being neglected than he does being cared for.
Let's talk about it.
Hot take.
He's been raised to be such a independent, self-sufficient badass that he doesn't know how to cope with anything else.
In a lot of ways, he's raised himself to be that, like, because of the neglect piece, he has had to become independent. He's had to learn to take care of himself. He's had to like learn to take care of Sam. And so he doesn't have, so any sort of infringement on that is just really uncomfortable for him. Like he's not bothered by the fact that John is leaving them for multiple weeks.
Right.
Not in the slightest.
He feels he's an adult and he gets to do his own thing while also raising his younger brother.
Well, he even says that to Amanda. He's like, don't feel sorry for me.
He's like, I do whatever I want, whenever I want. It's perfect.
Right.
Like there's the like there. And I feel like too with Dean, like based on things we know of their childhood and of the way John acts when John is around, even from thinking back to season 1 when we had the Something Wicked flashback episode, when I think John's absence allows both Dean and Sam to be happier, even though
there's a lot less tension when John's not around.
Yes.
Yeah. They seem to be Sam and Dean seem to coexist pretty well in this. Like they are a fully functioning unit. They take care of each other.
Yeah.
They have a conversation about halfway through that really drives that point home, with just the way that they talk about their plans for the day and whatnot and how things are going. They settled into a routine without John there. It works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, that's a response from both of them to the neglect they've experienced, as they've learned to cope and take care of their own problems. Even Dean, like in that conversation that you just mentioned, Noah, they're talking about the bully, and they're talking about what Sam has been experiencing. And Dean's like, first off, I'll take care of it. And then he's like, wait a second, like, Sam, you could have taken care of it. Like, you are fully capable of that. Like,
right.
They're both independently, because of them, like, they're both independently developed these like coping skills. But these coping skills have also made it impossible for either of them to like actually really connect with people. Like neither of them have like real honest connections with people in this episode. Like they try, but neither of them have the skills to actually do that because they've never been taught those skills.
Yeah, because all they've had to do is just take care of themselves and survive.
Yep.
Those are the skills they've had to learn.
Yeah, which I think is a thing when you think about like neglect. It's not just about the physical aspects of neglect. It's not just about the, having to find your own food or having to drive yourself to school or having to all of those things. It's about like, it's also the emotional neglect of like not learning how to trust people, not knowing you have someone to go to when you're in trouble, not having someone who puts any boundaries up for like normal high school teenage developing brain limits. Like they don't, not having a curfew is like feels great to him, but what it means is that like nobody is checking up on whether he's home at night.
Yeah.
The scene when Sam is talking to the first one possessed from the first attack, and she writes him off as just another person that's gonna shuffle her away, and she isn't there for it, and he has to convince her that he's worth listening to, that he actually does care about her, and he's actually going to listen to what she says. Screams that this girl has been treated with neglect about her feelings, emotions, reality in general.
Experiences. Yeah.
Hurts.
Like this is not new. Like this is the incident that like landed her in the hospital, but the fact that she immediately knows like nobody is going to listen to me, like nobody's going to listen to like why this happened to me.
Well, and the way that she whips it back around as soon as she feels that like she wants to be more secure, she immediately is like, no, what are you, crazy? And Sam immediately is like, oh, like teenagers.
Yeah. Children can be cruel. It came up multiple times, and it almost tries to normalize kids being bullying the crap out of each other. And it's that's a phrase you hear everywhere in life.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting how this episode like has that line, like Dean says it, a couple other characters say it, but what the episode actually is kind of arguing for is actually that like when kids are violent, it usually means like something else is going on.
Right.
It usually means that like something else, they're being neglected, they're being hurt, they're not being listened to, and it's coming out in their behaviors. And like that's in contrast with like, oh, kids can be mean, like sure, but like did you consider like why, like when kids are mean, like why is that happening? And I think most of the time that's happening because of like trauma, and the research kind of supports that. Like most of the time that's happening because of some trauma that is happening.
Yeah. They're trying to communicate something. It's just not the right way to communicate.
And like it's really important to not, and like want to be really explicit to not like be like just because someone's like violence and bullying are like not okay, not
great,
regardless of what you've experienced yourself. And like Sam experiences that in this episode where his way of responding, he sticks up for himself, he sticks up for Barry, but then he chooses to the level of violence he chooses to exert on Dirk and the words that he chooses to use are intended to bully, and that's not okay. And he, like, Sam has to kind of reckon with those impacts, like with how that's kind of played out for Dirk, like in the future, which I think they don't give a good resolution for.
They don't. He's confronted with that very heavily, and he has to just wrestle with that and know that he, without intending to, instigated a young man to take his own life. And that's a lot. That's a lot to carry on your shoulders constantly.
Yeah.
I do think it was a really good scene of them talking to Dirk's dad and Sam being all in himself, like, this guy was such a bully, he was such an asshole, like, I bet he's still such an asshole, I bet, like, whatever. And the dad being like, he had a hard time, and Sam slowly, oh, like, he did have a hard time, and I neglected to even look at that, until the dad finally being like, yeah, he was bullied a lot, like, they called him Dirk the jerk, and Sam like, oh, fuck. Yeah, I think that was really impactful. Like, you can stand up for yourself, but you can still do that and neglect that you're going to hurt somebody else.
And Sam doesn't know a better way to stand up for himself. Like, you see that even in the way they shoot that scene. Like, Sam is clearly highly trained. Like, he's been clearly trained by John and trained by Dean. Like, he's like so much smaller than the other kid, and he has one hell of a sucker punch. And like, that's coming down to, he knows how to respond, but he doesn't know how to actually think through, it's all defense. It's all like, if I hit you hard enough, you'll stop hitting me.
Right. There's no Winchester like instinct to disengage. It's always to kill and to finish it. So I imagine fighting a bully in high school when it's not a monster, it's hard to know where that stopping point is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I do like that they as they go through that, by the end, one of the things Sam says to Dirk's ghost is, he says, like, because Dirk's ghost is kind of calling him on it and going, you're evil, like, you did this to me. And like, Sam definitely had an impact, but Sam is also not the only impact on this kid's life. Like, this kid experienced neglect and violence from like a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think it was powerful that Sam is able to kind of like hold both of those things, like, I treated this person that I didn't realize was suffering terribly, and like, this name haunted him for years and years afterwards. But also, he says to him, like, I'm not evil, Dirk, neither were you, we were just kids, like, we were scared, we were miserable, we took it out on each other. And I think Sam, at this point in this season, like, so much of Sam's life has just sort of been like taken, so much of his agency has just sort of been taken from him. We've talked about that a bunch of times, but like, Sam is wrestling with, am I good, am I evil? And like, I think it's that powerful that he gets to see that, at least as a child, like, he was just a kid.
Yeah. God, yeah.
He wasn't evil, even if some of the ways he was being treated maybe made him feel that way. I think, okay, to like turn us a little bit in a little bit of a different emotional direction, I think it's very funny that the four of us are on this episode, the four of us notable homeschooled children that didn't attend normal public high schools.
Whoops.
And we're here to talk about this episode that is like almost entirely set in high school. And I have no idea of the accuracy of this.
Yeah, same.
The stories I've heard, that bullying sounds accurate. So
yeah, that's also what I've heard.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, yeah, you missed out on the school experience. But you know what? If I only had to deal with the bullying from and to my siblings, then it's a lot less than, the whole school.
Yeah.
Or multiple different schools if you moved around a lot. Goddamn. Nightmare scenario.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting seeing, because I imagine as a homeschool kid going to a co-op where there was like maybe 40 people, that was huge. That was like a big event. That was cool. Yes. Of course, held in a church. Don't even sweat. But going in, and Dean, like, knowing they're not going to be there for long and being like, this is great, I can just pop in, fuck around, find out, leave. Sam is like, I hate being the new kid because that's always a struggle, and I can't just fuck around and find out and leave because I'm so little.
Yeah.
But like, that turning into the opposite, like them feeling the opposite, leaving.
Yeah.
I feel like that is a very high school multiple people in the same area interacting. Like that just tends to happen. I feel like expectations don't last long.
No.
Yeah, I like that you pointed out that flip because it's almost like both of them come in, like Dean comes in with this persona of like, I'm Mr. Cool and nothing I do really matters and I'm just gonna kind of have a good time. And by the time he leaves, he's been like stripped down to his vulnerable side and to like being really publicly shown to like not have it all together,
right?
To be what Amanda says, she's like, you're just a sad lonely little kid, and that's like very much how he feels when he leaves, like he's being seen for what's really going on, as opposed to Sam, who starts out like more honest, and then by the end Sam is just being seen as this like persona of like this kid who stood up to the bully. They both kind of make that flip and are less able to be really in any real relationships with other people at the school. Like they're not able to make those real connections.
And I think it's interesting because at the start of the episode, when they mention the school and Dean, who left having a really hard time, is like, oh yeah, I remember that. We went for a month or so. Don't you remember? And Sam being like, I don't remember. Like, I think that's so interesting that they had such an opposite experience, but Dean remembers it because that was something he did not like. And Sam was like, yeah, I just fought somebody. Like, I do that all the time. I think that was interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting take. Dean leaving the school as a sad, lonely little kid and being hesitant to go back because it just brought back the sad, lonely little kid in him. And he didn't want to go back and re-experience that. I will say, every single outfit he brought with him, though, was on point.
Yes, I'm glad you finally got to see the gym teacher.
I know. I got
Oh
to
my
come for
God.
gym teacher.
He walked on screen and I said, oh, okay, this is that episode. Perfect. I've seen this.
Yeah.
And he said, dodge. And I knew exactly what was going to happen. It was perfect. Beautiful. Seen that clip.
I will say that school needs to do better background checks.
Yeah.
Yeah, my God.
He got a job, walked in and hit a kid within 30 seconds. And okay, cool.
And
he's out.
Nobody was asking any questions.
Nobody said anything. They were like, that's gym class. I guess that's gym class. I've never been to gym class.
To be fair, from my limited knowledge of like high school gym, that seems fairly accurate.
Which is even funnier because 2008 people were like, fuck it.
They were still like, dodgeball's fine.
Yeah.
Dodgeball's a great gym activity.
There's no social implications to dodgeball. I'm in teacher education, and one of the first things so I'm in elementary education, so we study like everything. And one of the first things a couple of years ago that my PE instructor said about teaching PE was the first rant he went on was a "don't do dodgeball, please" rant.
Please.
Damn.
So I've got it ingrained in me, the dangers of dodgeball. So this scene makes me cringe so much.
Fair.
Well, the outfit brings me great joy.
Yeah.
Great joy. Great joy.
Fine.
Have any of you actually played dodgeball?
Yeah.
Yes.
At co-op.
Like a
Yeah.
co-op. Yeah.
Didn't you play?
Summer
We played in a
camps.
co-op, Sam. You remember?
I did.
Summer camps,
Mhm.
yeah. We didn't play too much in summer
being
camps.
just as bad.
I do remember dodgeball being terrifying.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
It was so dangerous. As
Yeah.
an adult now, and also as like an educator, I'm like, no.
Not ideal.
All of the like big kids
Terrible.
with like all the kids that played sports with like the real strong throw, just like lobbing it at like the 5-foot children and like 5-foot, me.
Yeah, and they're lobbing it
They are.
as
they
hard
are
as they
chucking
can.
it.
Because they're like, oh, I'm allowed to throw ball at someone?
Perfect.
You want me to throw this at that kid over there that was saying something about me yesterday? For sure, dog.
For sure. For sure.
So turns out, even though we haven't been to high school, the dynamics never change.
Yeah.
No.
I do think it's iconic that Dean, feeling like he wants to be on top of the place, goes in as a gym teacher and is like holding charge, making kids run laps. He's got a whistle. Someone take away the whistle.
The whistle makes me their god, which is a great line.
It's so good. But Sam going in as like a janitor and just kind of like being there, I think it's a very funny dynamic between the two of them, for Dean to walk in and be like, I'm a gym teacher, like, yeah, they're all like, kid runs out bleeding, like, and Sam's like, I got cleaner.
Okay, but you know
That's
what?
such a younger brother thing.
that kid ran out crying or with the blood from his nose, but he knew his name. He said, "Hey,
He
He
did
knew his
know
name.
Colby.
He was a good teacher.
I do. Okay,
committed."
I have such mixed feelings about this because I'm like, on the one hand, he like injures a couple of children.
Yep.
But they probably had the
Categorically
best
bad.
gym period ever.
Some
But
of them.
I also
Most
am
of
like,
them.
this is like your first or second day, and you already know the kids' names, which is hard to do. And I think he does. I think the thing is, the energy in that scene is like, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm a bad teacher, not like trying to be a bad teacher. Yeah.
Yeah,
He
like
hates
he
the
wants
kids,
to
he just
be
doesn't know
there.
what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though, to be fair, even if you don't know what you're doing, not throwing a ball, not like
It's
there's
not,
things.
it's not that hard to
Into
figure
the-
out. You shouldn't throw a ball at a kid from 4 feet away. Like, no.
Yeah.
You're also a very strong person whose job is incredibly
Fight
physical.
monsters for a living?
Right? Like, did he flash back to like high school and he thought he was like 17, just like, haha, no, man, dude, you're like 2
30.
feet taller than him. Stop.
I wanted to see a flashback with Dean looking back on, how cocky he was. "Oh, I'm a hero. I save lives," and doing all that and comparing it to him now is a significant difference. He's done way worse things on the hero side and not the hero side. So he'd probably have quite a grounded chat with little 17-year-old punk Dean.
And his life was saved.
Mm-hmm. Multiple
Yes.
times.
So
Yes, exactly. It's one of my favorite fan fiction tropes, and like kind of fics is like fic where young Dean meets older Dean,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a specific genre, and there's a couple of fics that are just very good because they allow you to do that, where they're like season 1 Dean, you don't know anything, let's put you with like season 14 Dean and let you figure out, and like the posturing and the like persona falling away after all of these experiences is like
Ooh.
it's a fascinating dynamic
wow.
that I love. So
Now, once we get to 14, we'll have to break out some of those for the
Yes.
fake recommendations.
There you go.
yes,
That'd be
don't
great.
worry, I've got a spreadsheet.
Perfect.
Can we talk about the assignment, the teacher?
Yes.
Sam's favorite
Yeah.
teacher, and the assignment, and like that whole storyline, because I think we should talk
I
about that.
loved how the teacher approached, just in general, the entire topic. He didn't discredit any of Sam's story. He expressed disbelief, but wasn't like calling him out on it or making him say that it was fake or making him admit to anything. He just goes into it trying to see where Sam's at. And it's the most wholesome moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he like uses the assignment as a way to like actually just ask real questions to Sam, to go like, okay, outside of the werewolf, is that how you describe your family? And like he tries to see that Sam is sharing himself in the only way that he knows how, even if the story he's told isn't true.
Right.
Like, I think he gets that, like, he thinks it, I think probably that it's like a metaphor for Sam's experiences with his
Yeah.
family, not like literally what he's experiencing, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the teacher, he seems like a really great teacher. He seems like he really does his best to support his kids and whatnot. I think it was really iconic how he was like, Sam, was this how you would describe your family? And Sam was like, yeah, like he got to the point where he was listening to Sam more than most people do and actually asking like, do you want to go into the family business?
Mm-hmm.
That, oh my God.
Which, can I also say that the Winchesters as a traveling mechanic family would be iconic and a great
Iconic.
little sitcom to watch, but not as interesting in the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I really love that. And I think they like, okay, so props to Colin Ford, who is the actor who plays young Sam.
Yes.
Because I think he
Oh,
like
yeah.
captures the energy of, like, he captures the same energy that Jared captures in the character.
Yes.
And he like channels that into like small rage, sad, angsty teenage Sam. And also just like that line where he, goes like, no one's ever asked me that before. Breaks my heart. It's one of the saddest moments, I think, for Sam in like the entire series. And that is saying a lot
Yeah.
for Sam.
Mhm.
But like that moment of like, no one has ever asked me what I want. Like that's what neglect is.
That's
It's like
straight up.
Yeah.
neglect is no one ever caring enough to ask you what you actually want.
Yeah.
Or just caring enough in general. And we see that after when he goes back to the teacher
Mhm.
and
Right.
says, you took an interest in me when no one else did.
Right.
And that matters.
And I think you can like see it in the flashback in his face when the teacher is like asking him questions. You can see how surprised he is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That like, oh, this is an adult that's actually genuinely trying to care for me.
Yeah.
And how that's like a very foreign thing for him.
Baffling and heartbreaking.
And I think it's iconic how when Sam came back in the present and was talking to him, and the teacher was like, what did I say? Because obviously he talks to a bunch of students and he's not gonna, and Sam's like, you told me I didn't have to go into the family business. And the teacher's like, oh yeah, I do remember you. And then he asked if Sam is happy, and Sam's like, oh, he still cares. He's actually been caring this whole time.
Yeah, it's like watching Sam's face of just like, again, he's being asked a question he has no idea how to answer.
Yeah.
He has no idea how to answer the question of like, are you happy? Because like, of course he isn't happy. Like Sam's life is really sad. And like right now, Sam is wrestling with like some really big stuff about like the end of the world. And
Yeah.
and like Sam's not doing well. We know Sam's not doing well. But like that, this teacher is the kind of teacher that has a really big impact.
Yeah.
Killed it.
We also get themes, which we've had before a handful of times, of like specifically of the use of the word freak to describe Sam. And that's like significant for Sam's arc. Like Sam being like, I don't want to be the freak for once.
Right.
Like I want to be normal. And like we know Sam is not normal, not only because of like being, his knowledge of hunting, but like he literally has demon blood in his veins from Azazel. Like Sam never feels normal. And I think this is like an interesting to like show us, like it's an interesting way to show us that like that's even that concept of like being a freak is something that goes back to Sam's childhood.
Right. It's haunted him forever.
And that was like what you see triggered him to fight back. Like the first time first time Dirk was like fought him and knocked him out there, he doesn't respond. And then when the word freak comes out, you can see it in his face.
Yeah.
And that's like a really triggering thing for him.
Gosh, yeah.
He says that at the beginning when he's talking about how he doesn't want to be the new kid. It's hard being the freak or something along those lines.
Yeah. And I think it's really also like, I really love, we don't get like a lot of young Sam and young Dean interacting. Like we only get a couple of scenes of it, but I think I really noticed them this watch, especially the one after the first bullying incident, the one where Dean's like, I'm going to rip his throat out.
About his lungs.
Yeah.
And then,
like when Dean goes full protective older brother, like the big sibling energy. But I also really appreciated that he like listens to like I really noticed that like that young Dean, like 16, 17-year-old Dean, like really listens to Sam. Like he doesn't go off and like insist that he takes care of it. He like listens to Sam.
Yeah.
And like actually, asks, why didn't you tear him apart? What's going on? Like he like, and also like the fact that Sam is able to go and tell Dean this, like what happened. Like there's a level of like mutually caring for each other. And like Sam does the same for Dean, where he's also being like, oh, you've got him, like, I know you don't like want to be here. And like, Dad said it's going to be another week, but like you've got Amanda and she seems really nice. Like their interactions are really sweet in this episode. And I'm really fond of them.
Yeah.
I did like how there was a mirror of that, because after the first bullying scene, when Dean is like, I'm gonna rip his throat out, like I'm gonna da 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 da, and he stops and he's like, Sam, you can handle it, like why didn't you? And then in the present, after the ghost knocks Sam out or whatever, and Dean's like, oh, I'm gonna kill that ghost, I'm gonna burn it, like I'm gonna burn his bones, I'm gonna like Dean's Dean's immediate action after Sam is even disgruntled is like, oh, I'm gonna fuck him up, I'm gonna fuck him up.
It's big older sibling energy right there.
Yeah, unlike a certain parent, John Winchester.
Yeah, who we know is not going to be doing anything helpful if his kids are getting bullied.
Yeah, get fucked.
Give them some brass knuckles and send them on their way.
Yeah, send her to school with a butterfly knife.
Yeah. The strategic note, the teacher, when the teacher's describing Sam's writing and he goes, your brother, like Dean, seems to be like quite a character, which I think is just very funny.
It's so funny.
And then he goes, your father, he seems driven, which is like
Mhm.
such strategic, like, I don't know. It's funny because like as a person who's like worked with a lot of children and like had, like you find ways to like say something without being offensive and without necessarily like you not necessarily even sugarcoating it, but just like strategically.
Right.
And saying he seems driven rather than saying he seems obsessive, just like such an interest, like it's such a teacher sort of choice of words of like he's trying to not this is Sam's dad, like he's trying to like make an observation about John without like, I don't know, maybe saying all of his thoughts.
Yeah. And it's the teacher seeing that neglect and choosing to address it without directly saying, hey Sam, you've been neglected, like what's going on there? Just being like, your dad seems really driven, like how's that, how do you feel about that? Like that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's like why it's like that seems really powerful.
I think it's really important that this episode is bookended by the biggest example of neglect and then the biggest figure in Sam's childhood that cared about him and actually took an interest, because at the beginning they don't even show John. He drops him off. He drives off.
Nothing.
Sure, they couldn't afford Jeffrey Dean Morgan, but they don't even show him on screen, so he's neglecting to even care about a goodbye or anything like that.
Yeah,
it's an interesting aspect to the episode.
Yeah, his absence is the strongest signifier.
Yeah,
that's and visually like the presence of the car is, and you see Dean driving it, and when you see Dean driving it, it feels like something that's bringing him and Sam together. The 2 times you see John driving it, it's the sign that like, oh, his neglect is kicking in again. He's leaving them, and then he's like removing them from a situation where they could have had stability if they'd been able to stick around.
Yeah, I feel like it was really glossed over how good of a dig Chester is. I feel like if somebody said that to John Winchester, he would have a heart attack and die.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty solid burn.
Just make John so irrationally angry, his heart would stop.
Yeah.
It's true. I did note that one. Well, we're going to move now into our Going Meta section, where we are tracking lore, talking about representation, behind the scenes trivia, and anything else that doesn't kind of fit into our main discussion. So to start us off, we have our representation check. So this includes things like Bechdel and gender and relationships. I got a few notes here, and none of them are fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, we've got rampant fatphobia.
Like
and
the whole
aggressive.
episode.
It's so unnecessary. Sure, maybe that's how high schools are. Doesn't mean it's okay or it's
they also
pleasant to
lean
watch.
into that from certain characters, like just in the way they portray certain characters. Like it's not just that a character is fatphobic towards another character, it's that like the whole episode is fatphobic towards
it's the way
everyone.
that they
like
have written it.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of little digs and comments that are just entirely unnecessary and really gross.
It hurt to watch, honestly. It's just disappointing.
Yeah,
and just really harmful, like to talk, like if we're talking about bullying, to
reinforce those stereotypes through the show as they're talking about how stereotypes are hurtful. It's like, okay, double standards much.
Yeah, and like if you're going to talk about the impact of this bullying, like you need to not then also make it a punchline by some of your main characters. You need to like truly honestly show its impact and then very clearly make it clear that your characters are not going to perpetuate that as a joke. Like that's not good comedy.
Right.
No.
The other thing I
hate
this line so much. It's one of my least favorite lines
in the episode by far.
It's so bad.
It's worst line in a few episodes by far.
And the way Sam responds is very iconic because he just shuts it down.
I think that's why we need to talk about it, is to hype up Sam's answer. Because Dean comes out of left field with breaking into the records room and whatnot and figuring out that 3 of the cheerleaders are legal. Okay, which fucking gross.
Also feels like the kind of persona that they like have tried to slap onto Dean as a character since season 1 and has felt less and less in character based on everything else they've done.
Right.
Dean has not hit on anyone really since other than Anna, since like season 3.
And Anna was an angel.
And Anna was not even like traditional hitting on, like she hit on him mostly. Like I am struggling to think of many instances where he's like genuinely really hit on anyone since Hell. And so that comment feels like out of left field. It's super gross.
Yeah.
But Sam instantly shuts it down, moves on, does not give him any sort of credence.
No leeway.
No leeway.
Yeah, thank goodness.
It's gross and nasty and is not the real Dean.
And was just not needed.
Yeah.
Like we just didn't need it.
Like he could have been like, did you know one of the teachers is hot? Like,
Yes, that would have been
that's so
so much
easy.
better.
it's so easy.
Still kind of gross, but like at least not like
We're not
vaguely-
objectifying young girls. Yeah.
exactly. Like let's not. Yeah,
You're a grown ass man. Get your head out of your ass.
and like yeah, exactly.
Right. And it could be like him reverting back to how he was in high school, but that's still not like,
Yeah.
that's still
Yeah,
not.
it's
You're
not an
still
excuse.
you're a grown man.
Yeah, and it does not track with what we've seen from him recently
Right.
with women. It just like doesn't track with the way he's been interacting with female characters in more recent episodes. And so like even if
Yeah.
this was a part of his personality, which I would argue it like isn't, it's way out of left field in an episode. Like it's like they were trying to add some humor into the episode, but in the worst possible way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not helpful, not necessary in the slightest.
In more positive like representation, I think some of the ways they represent the impacts of bullying, like we talked about that a whole bunch, but like the impacts of bullying on mental health and on your relationships and the impacts of like trauma on your ability to make friends, like all of those things I think were really represented in a way that's sad but there.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that they hit the target so well on those topics and then just completely missed it on these others.
Yeah. Which I think is, again, like they're falling into some of the stereotypes, because even in the representation that's better, it's still very like stereotypical, like the nerds are being bullied, the jocks are bullying them, you know, like all of those things.
Right.
It's very 2009.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say I forgot to watch for it, but I'm pretty sure like before the ghost kills the first victim, I think they have a conversation. But do they have names? I don't think so.
They don't have names.
Ooh.
And I think they're talking about
so close.
They're talking about the person bullying them and how the people at the other table were rude and what she did, and all she did was have sex with a guy. So like, I mean,
Like
And I
kind
feel
of
like
it was like they almost got there, but they missed the mark.
yeah, they were so close. Another line that confused me was popcorn, extra butter. Ooh, kinky.
what? I don't
When?
remember that.
Okay, in the
line.
movie, the dean is he says
In the movie.
no, sorry, in the show, in the episode. Dean says,
Like-
you and me, popcorn, extra butter. And Amanda says,
Oh, when he's talking to
kinky.
Amanda, young Dean.
It's like,
I don't want to. Yeah. I don't want to make any comments on that.
no,
That's not
that line sticks out because of Dear Evan Hansen, and kinky
Kinky.
has always been a thing and for the longest time. So I say that just about the most random shit. So it was funny to
So-
see that portrayed here.
From Dean years before.
Yeah.
Checks out.
I mean, we know from other comments from Dean later on that he likes to have some fun. It's not always traditional in
No.
what he enjoys. So we'll leave it at that. He's using the correct term for
Yeah.
at least.
Okay.
There we go.
Good. So get this. I was looking into the lore the other day. It was today. And they do establish some new ghost lore and ghost rules,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
Sam says is established from years of history and whatnot, and people have reported stuff like that. But this is new for the show. New ground for them to cover ghosts leaving their general place of haunt.
Mhm.
Or I guess having their place of haunt be a moving vehicle is new too.
Well, we've seen that before because we had the ghost in Route 666,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
did, but the ghost possession thing is new.
Yeah.
The idea that a ghost can possess a person, as opposed to, ghosts
their
being
own
their own
spirit.
thing,
Corporeal
Yeah.
form.
which is,
Fascinating. And the logistics of shooting the rock salt at these poor people. Are they going to end up with just salt shredded in them?
broken ribs and some broken, like real broken
They're
ribs.
hitting them with a shotgun from feet away. So
I know they were shooting that football player, and I was like, is he gonna walk again?
this guy's football career is done.
Yeah,
Fuck.
it's not great. I think they're like, we're not actually shooting them, so
Lesser of
It's
two
fine.
evils.
Walk it off.
to quote a certain someone.
We get another reference that they killed a werewolf. I think we've had that mentioned that the summer before they hunted a werewolf with John. But cool hearing that brought up again in context.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm just having a connection because there's a flashback episode in season 9 where there is hints that there has been a werewolf fight.
Oh.
And I'm trying to figure out if I think it works with the timeline of that happening before this. So I think I know which werewolf fight they're referring to. And if it is, it's actually a really interesting one for Sam to have chosen to talk about, because it's actually like, it's just a reference in a later episode in a flashback where Dean makes reference to something happening, some injuries that he has because of a werewolf. And the person that he's telling this to doesn't believe in the supernatural. So they are just like, right. And there's like kind of unclear in that episode. It's kind of unclear if it's a werewolf or if it's potentially John's doing that Dean is injured. And it's like very unclear. And so I think that's a very interesting.
So the werewolf could have been metaphorical.
Yeah, I'm making that connection. If you have seen season 9, Bad Boys, if you're listening, that's the episode I'm referring to.
Tweet at us. Not at me, but at us.
Yes. Any other lore? Anything else anyone found interesting about the like actual supernatural stuff in this episode?
Visual of the ghost getting burned up was pretty good. Special effects are stepping it up. I like it.
Yeah, it's a little new too.
Yeah.
But besides that, I don't think anything else. Sam's note. I forgot how sad this episode is.
It's literally my
That's the
only
most
note.
important note.
Yep.
I mean, I think I always remember that this is the episode where we get Dean in that outfit. And I'm like, haha, it's so funny. And then it's like the only scene that's funny
Yeah.
in the whole episode.
Yeah, I went into the episode being like, oh yeah, we get some flashbacks, we get the funny Dean scene, it's gonna be great. And then after I watched it, I was like, oh.
Now I'm bummed.
Just tragic.
Drama.
Yeah.
Speaking of trauma, this seems like a phenomenal time to slide right into our last and one of our favorite parts of the episode, our character blessings. We pick a little person in the episode that we connected to, call them out for something that they did great or something that we appreciate seeing them represent. Abigail, did you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm going to bless Mr. Wyatt, the teacher, because we talked about this, but just we see like him across like 20 years, like a 10, probably been about 15 years. And he is still at this school. He's still serving kids. Like I see, I like even in one of the shots of the classroom, there's this like handwritten on his sign about like a book club. Like he seems like the kind of teacher that is just really deeply invested in his students and cares about them as people. And that has a really big impact, when we're talking about like neglect and like even the counter to neglect is just like consistent care. And he seems like a teacher that is providing that for his students and has been for a lot of years. And, like obviously had an impact on Sam's life, but he probably had an impact on like hundreds or thousands of other children. And I mean, that's something that maybe if you're listening, you've either had a teacher or you've been a teacher that has done that or you've been in any kind of like role where you've been able to care for a child that maybe is otherwise being neglected. And so a blessing for Mr. Wyatt and for anyone who finds themselves on either end of care like that.
Nicely done.
Cheers.
I'm going to go ahead and bless Dean this week because my boy went through the ringer and he realized a lot of things about himself and past him. And it's a lot to grow with. And I just want to wish the best to him and how he moves forward from there.
Valid.
Theo, what about you?
I want to bless Amanda.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a super incredible thing to do when maybe you've been sleeping with this boy, maybe you're dating and you find him kissing somebody else and you're not upset. You're just like, I see how much you hurt. I see how much neglect you feel. I'm sorry about that. Like that is incredibly mature, especially for somebody in high school, because God knows I've never got that. But I think that was really I hope she's in a good spot. I hope that she continued to grow in that.
She also sticks up for her own boundaries, which is really
She does,
cool.
which is incredible.
Good, healthy decision making.
She goes, I know that you're doing this because you're hurting, but also like this means we're over because
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow you to like just hurt me.
Yep.
Props to Amanda.
Well, does anyone have anything else they want to share about the episode?
I did really chuckle near the very end where they're fighting the ghost and Dean gets in the bus and they're like, what are you doing? And he's like, they're like, aren't you the gym teacher? He's like, no, it's like 21 Jump Street. The bus driver's selling pot. And then they like shoot him with the salt.
Yeah. Runs out.
It was so choice. That
Oh
was
my
so
God.
good.
What a good misdirect there.
You know,
Yeah.
he was waiting the entire time. As soon as they went
He was
undercover at a
waiting.
school, he was ready with that
Oh,
21
yeah.
Jump Street
You
reference.
were
Yeah.
excited.
Well, that is all that we have for you today. You can subscribe to Saving People Queering Things wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much to Theo for joining us today.
Of course.
It was so
Thank you for
much fun,
having me.
honestly.
Thank you
Made
for
the
having
whole
me.
day. It was fantastic. Anytime you
It's
want to
always
come
a
on,
pleasure.
Yes, we'll get you on for your regular spot as always, Miss Ethan.
Hell yeah. I'm excited.
you can find links to our social media and join our Discord server through our website, queeringthingspodcast.com.
Be sure to ride along with us next week as we discover episode 14, Sex and Violence, through this theme of vices.
Thank you all so much for coming along for the ride, and we wish you a peaceful road until we meet again.